Nobody tells you about these things when they move to Albania. And honestly, a few of them made me look like an idiot when I first got here. After living here for almost a year, here's 10 cultural differences that'll save you time, money, and a lot of awkward moments. Seating. Picture yourself stepping off the plane at the Toronto airport for the first time. You're excited, you're intimidated, you're probably a little hungry. Let me just save you a little trouble when you walk into your first eating establishment. Seat yourself. Virtually every place we've been to has been self-seating. Everything from patios at cafes to nicer restaurants. Generally, you seat yourself. Tipping. Now you've had your meal, you need to pay the bill. So what do you do for the tip? This one's very controversial. Tipping culture is not the same here. Workers around the more popular touristy areas are probably anticipating a tip, but when it comes to the culture, they're not expecting it quite as much. And if they do get a tip, they don't assume it's going to be as much. It's common people will just leave the change left over from whatever bill that they spend. 10%, for example, is a very good tip here. Some people will advocate against tipping too much to further encourage a tipping culture here, but the workers generally seem pretty appreciative when you leave them a tip. Smiling. I can't tell you how many times I've heard an expat complain about how the people here don't smile or they seem cold. Expats often feel like a worker's being rude to them because they don't smile while they're helping. People don't necessarily smile at each other on the street as they're walking. Strangers don't smile at each other. If you come from a culture that smiles easily, it might seem a little cold, but it doesn't come without reason. This country only escaped its dire political situation in the 90s. There are people alive today that lived through a very oppressive government here. Smiling was suspicious. It drew unwanted attention. People learn not to smile so easily and it impacted the culture. But let me assure you, even if a person's not smiling, it doesn't mean that they're not helpful or empathetic. Don't take it personally. I know when I first got here, a lot of the cashiers wouldn't smile at me, and after a while, I started to wear them down, and now we smile when we see each other. This one's really tricky. Customer service. It's common to hear expats complain about the customer service here. Workers may seem less interested in chasing work or securing an opportunity that you may have for them. You may have to follow up several times. Deadlines may be missed. The quality of the work might be questionable. It's a pretty common experience here. I've met extremely friendly, helpful people here, but I've also encountered my fair share of unhelpful, disinterested people. When it comes to smaller things, it's tolerable and it's not a huge problem. Don't expect your waiter, for example, to come check on you after you order. When you need to pay the bill, you'll probably have to chase them down too. But if you need something important or expensive done, I would strongly recommend finding someone that you feel extremely comfortable with before committing to anything. You need to hire a lawyer or a contractor. You need to see a doctor or a dentist. You want to make a purchase like a home or a car? Don't just rely on the first person that you meet. Get referrals before committing with anyone and give yourself several options. This is the kind of footwork that felt like it was less necessary over the last several decades as the internet's changed things. In a lot of ways, it feels kind of like the 80s or the 90s here. So everything's based on personal relationships. So start making them. Handshakes. This one doesn't take much explanation, but it's a funny observation. People don't really seem to care too much about the presentation. They're not as strong or as firm as you might be used to. More often than not, you'll see this style of handshake. I'll put a picture here. Probably not really appropriate in a professional environment, but if you make an Albanian friend, he might appreciate this kind of handshake. Text message etiquette. This one cracks me up. I think it's a pretty common American attitude to want to get straight to the point, especially in text messages. I know a lot of people in my demographic that want to cut out phone calls entirely and only communicate via text message, in large part to cut out the filler. Well, here in Albania, if you want to start a dialogue with someone, even via text message, it's polite to start with a hello, how are you, and then wait for a response. At first, I would try and kind of get around this and get straight to the point, but I felt like I was being corrected and people would respond back in a way to try and make sure that we got the greeting out of the way before we addressed whatever business that we had together. It could slow things down a little bit, but in a lot of ways, that's exactly what we wanted. Now, anytime I start a conversation with a person, I usually start the dialogue this way, and everyone's probably better for it. Lines and cues. People come here and they expect things to work the way they're accustomed to. That's not going to go well for you. Something I hear often are expats complaining about how people will cut in lines here. It's true, people definitely cut in lines here. You may be standing in a short line at a grocery store and someone comes in and they just step in front of you and the cashier happily helps them first. Most often when this happens to me, I have a basket full of stuff and the person cutting in front of me only has a couple of things. So it makes sense for me for them to cut. It doesn't bother me. Sometimes it seems like they're in a hurry. Generally I'm not, so I have no problem letting a person go in front of me if they're rushing. I grew up where lines were how things were dealt with and you waited your turn. But the culture here is very different. This culture is way more about getting what you need and taking what you can get. They're not being rude, they're existing the way their culture has taught them to exist. 10 minutes. If I had a nickel for every time someone said, I'll be there in 10 minutes, just keep in mind that if you hear 10 minutes from someone, it has little bearing on when they'll actually arrive. 10 minutes in my experience seems to stand in for I'm on my way. I'm sure there's other examples of this for bigger time frames, but this is the one I hear the most frequently. Email. You'll find that WhatsApp is king here. Everyone uses it and businesses prefer to correspond with it. If you see a business with an email address, don't waste your time. We've had extremely bad luck with email. They go completely unnoticed. If you need something dealt with, you're better to reach out to a business on WhatsApp, or if you really need to get someone's attention, go into the office and make your presence known. An expression that I think about a lot here is the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, start squeaking, because sometimes that's going to be the only way you're going to get their attention. Parking. I'm really glad I don't have to deal with this one personally, but I can see people struggling with this all the time. Parking, compared to what I'm used to in the US, is completely different. First of all, there's virtually no parking lots. Cars park like on the curb. Literally, they drive up on the curb off the road. If you can't find a spot, it's pretty common to see people literally parking in the lane that they're driving in. It might be like a 2-lane road and a person just stops their car and they get out and go into whatever store that they're headed to. Every morning around 8 a.m., I can hear honking outside of my apartment because people are doing this. It is extremely common. One person can do it for a minute and it's fine, but if you have a person doing it on each lane, it brings traffic to a complete standstill. When I first heard people honking all the time, I thought it was funny, but then it occurred to me they must only do it because it actually works. And sure enough, if I can see one of these traffic jams forming from my balcony and I hear people honking, after enough people join the cacophony, you'll see the person that owns the car obstructing traffic come running and move their vehicle. When you move to a new country for the first time, culture shock's unavoidable. But hopefully with a little forethought and planning, you can learn some of these subtle things before you arrive. Ultimately, anything that you can do to make your transition a little smoother is worth the effort. If you enjoyed this, check out the next video. It'll help you plan your new life here in Albania.